Greetings, you all. What the hell wrong with my voice? Anyways, so today we're gonna do the rest of my M collection, artists with M in my vinyl collection. I did one with the whole Marley family just to kind of keep them together. Now we're gonna do, the various other artists with the letter M. So let us begin. First up, we have from Canada and 1980 release, Martha and the Muffins, Metro Music. This is a picture of the Toronto Harbor. I can't remember where I picked this up. I want to say it was at the Groove Shop, but I'm not positive. I first became aware of this band through a friend of mine when I worked at Broadway Video. Had this book of all the history of punk rock and all and new wave music and everything, and I was just thumbing through it, and it had entries for all the different bands, and it would list what records they had, etc., etc. And I was just thumbing through it. And I saw the Martha and the Muffins. And I just thought that was the funniest name for a band. And I remember bringing it up to my friend, and he was like, "I have one of their records." And I was like, "What?" So he brought it in. And it was like a best of compilation, and I actually liked it. I thought it was really good. The tune everybody knows from this album is "Echo Beach," which was a pretty successful song, mostly internationally. I'm sure in Canada, but in the U.S. it had some success, but they never really broke out in the United States. But it's a good record. Echo Beach, Indecision, Hide and Seek, Cheesies and Gum. How's about that one? I haven't dug too deep into this record. I don't know the last time I listened to it, but it's due for a spin on the old turntable. But good band, new wave, worth checking out. Martha and the Muffins, Metro Music. Now we got a couple of comedy records. We have Steve Martin, Let's Get Small. This was released in '77. I guess his debut comedy record. It opens up like gatefold here. This was when he was probably the most popular stand-up comedian there was. I guess a year or so later, he would be playing, giant arenas and stuff, which was really kind of bizarre for a stand-up comedian back then. This was recorded at the Boarding House in San Francisco. I like Steve Martin a lot. I loved his stand-up. A lot of it's very visual, so it's kind of odd to listen to it on an album. But, back then, comedy albums were doing really well. I guess they do pretty well now again, but there was a period in the 90s where, very few people were putting out comedy albums. I picked this up at Hold Fast in Asbury Park. Got this in their $2 bin. They always have a pretty good selection of stuff in there. But, fun album. Steve Martin, Let's Get Small. And from 1978, more Steve Martin, A Wild and Crazy Guy. That was his big catchphrase back in the day. Brought that to Saturday Night Live, and they used to do him and Aykroyd would do the Fest-Trunk Brothers Wild and Crazy Guy bit on that show. This had King Tut on it. That was a big hit. I think it was a number 17 on the Billboard chart. The album, I think, went to number 2, won a Grammy for Best Comedy Album. In 2015, this was added to the National Recording Registry, which is a list consisting of recordings that are deemed culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. So how about that for a comedy album? You believe that? Again, a lot of his comedy, there's a lot of visual aspects to it, so there may be some things that don't translate to a recording necessarily, the same with his other album, but it's still a funny record. I got this in the bargain bin at the Groove Shop. Can't pass that up, definitely worth picking it up. If you find this cheap, grab it. Funny record, Steve Martin, Wild and Crazy Guy. From 1985, Mental as Anything, Fundamental, straight from Australia, Mental as Anything. New wave band, that sort of had a kind of pop, there was sort of a goofy spirit about them, I think, sometimes, but maybe that's just an Australian thing. No offense to all my Australian watchers. I had this on cassette in, I think I got it in 86. I may have gotten it in 85, but it definitely got it in 86 because there was one track on here that I heard somewhere and I really loved, which is Live It Up. To this day, it's one of my favorite kind of like new wave pop songs. It didn't do much in the United States, but I think it did fairly well elsewhere. Same with this album, you know, I think it did pretty well elsewhere, but in the United States, I don't think it made much of a dent. The song Live It Up was also used in the movie Crocodile Dundee in 1986. So, you know, I might have sold a few more copies of this. You're So Strong is really good. Big Wheels, good. Live It Up, like I said. The rest of the tunes are kind of slipping my mind. I haven't listened to this in ages. I bought this album at FYE in Baton Rouge. It was used FYE, even though it was like this big chain, they still had like used stuff as well. I got this, and I don't remember if this was during like their going out of business sale or not, but I picked it up. And I don't think it cost very much at all. And I almost accidentally bought this a second time. I was in maybe like a year or so later. I was back in Baton Rouge, and I stopped in the Capital City Records, and they had this, and I couldn't remember if I had it or not. And I was like, man, do I have that? I want to buy it, but I think I have it on vinyl, but I couldn't remember. I remember the owner being like, "Oh, just buy it." Of course, he's a cool dude though. But I didn't buy it, and when I went home and checked, I was relieved to see that I did already have it, so I didn't feel like, oh, I missed out on picking that out. But ever since then, I started using this app, CLZ. I don't remember. I think it's like Collectors or something like that. But it's an app that keeps track of all the records, CDs, whatever I have are listed in there. So if I'm in a record store, I can pull out my phone and look up real quick and be like, oh, there. It was something I mean, I've got, you know, like closing in on 1,500 CDs, albums, etc. So it was something I had to have because, you know, I can't keep track of that. I'll never remember. It's happened once or twice before where I bought something that I already had. But anyways, great band, worth checking out. Mental as Anything. Now, 1982, we've got the Monroe, self-titled. This is actually like an EP. I think there's, 6 songs on here? 5 songs on here. The track that you would know from this is What Do All the People Know, which was kind of a successful single back in the 80s. The story with these guys was that they signed with this Japanese label called Alpha, and as What Do All the People Know was kind of climbing up the charts, I think the band was preparing to make a music video or something, and then for whatever reason, Alpha decided to like cease their ties to United States and stop promoting their records in the United States, and then suddenly this just kind of faded away, and it never really had much of an impact, you know, and the band really didn't do much after that. I picked this up at the Groove Shop, probably in their bargain bin. I don't think I paid a lot for it. I mean, I only knew that one song. I'm sure I got it cheap, so I was like, let me just take a try, you know, see what I got. My memory is that nothing else really stood out from this album to me, other than What Do All the People Know. I'd have to give it another listen, but and see if that my opinion stands. But I think the band not too long ago sort of reformed, or a version reformed, and released some new stuff, and may have like re-recorded What Do All the People Know and maybe some other tracks. And I think you can get that now on CD, but I haven't heard that. But you know, it's, you know, okay record, you know. I have to give it another try to see what I really think. So next up, from 1997, one of my favorite bands, the Muffs, Happy Birthday to Me. I've spoken about them a little bit before. This album actually is my introduction to the band. In 1997, I don't think I had heard too much by them. I definitely had heard Everywhere I Go, but I liked it, but it didn't really connect with me where I was like, I got to find out more about that band or look them up. And then I remember in 97 hearing Outer Space, and that really kind of piqued my interest, and that made me go, I got to find out who these guys are, what their deal is, and picked this up on CD back then and just loved it. I mean, this album is phenomenal. Crush Me, That Awful Man, Honeymoon, My Crazy Afternoon, Penny Whore, I'm a Dick, The Best Time Around, Keep Holding Me. Oh man, that's a great, great tune. This I was surprised to find on vinyl, like many things that came out in like the mid or later 90s. A lot of it didn't get released on vinyl, so because vinyl really was kind of forgotten at that point. So when I went digging for this years ago and wanted to see if there were any Muffs on vinyl, and I found this and surprised to find it, and I picked it up, and it's good. You know, I listened to it, but they've since reissued their first 3 or 4 records, and I remember commenting on when this was being reissued on vinyl. I remember making a comment saying, oh, I wish I had known that. I wouldn't have picked this up years ago. I think Ronnie, the bass player, responded saying, like, the sound of this is terrible, pick up the reissue. And sure, you know, I mean, he's trying to sell some new records. Why wouldn't the band say that? But I think they were being honest. They were probably not thrilled with how this sounded on vinyl, and were encouraging people to, you know, give these reissues that they spent time on to make sure they sounded top notch. So I think I'm gonna dive in and pick up their other albums on vinyl, because this is all I have of theirs on vinyl. I think I'm gonna go in and splurge and pick up these reissues that they put out on vinyl, including this one. So I'll probably sell this one off, I guess. But great album, great band. If you don't know the Muffs, they're kind of like, you know, that alt rock, kind of a punk edge to them, but great songs, really catchy stuff. Check them out, the Muffs. And that's it for this episode. Please subscribe, like the video. Let me know what you think of these albums or other albums by these artists. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching. As always, we'll see you next time.